brand new episode of the Brickyard Live Show. We are coming to you on YouTube right now. We appreciate if you're listening to us right now or after the fact. And we are here to give our final predictions for how the overall NFL landscape is going to shape out, or how we think it's going to shape out in 2025, 2026. We're also going to recap last year's draft and cover some news right now. And there's been a lot of buzz going on. And I know you're a huge fan of Cracker Barrel, but in the world where people get outraged about the dumbest stuff, Cracker Barrel taking over the news, and you have all of the Facebook boomers going off on Cracker Barrel like it's this national treasure. Because I don't know, I always thought Cracker Barrel was okay, but it's kind of just a place you go to and you expect the food to be frozen 5 times over. They microwave it for you and then give it to you. Like, I didn't think it was Cracker Barrel was this divisive.
Dude, well, here's the thing. Cracker Barrel itself, I don't think people give a fuck about. It's the logo, because the logo is what makes Cracker Barrel so much cooler. They have the old man in the logo. They got the wheelbarrow, and it's like a cozy logo. Like, you recognize that. You're like, oh, that's Cracker Barrel. And then they changed the logo to the most corporate, bland, boring bullshit logo I've ever, like, literally something that you and I could have made in Photoshop in like a minute. And that's exactly whoever made the logo did. They just
It
slapped
looked
together
like a
some font.
Canva template.
Yeah, it looked like a can. It looked terrible. And that's the thing. Like, Cracker Barrel, who cares about the food? It's the logo that matters. It's just like when anytime they have like an iconic logo and they change it, like if they were to remove Wendy from the Wendy's logo, or the golden arches, they replace it with the bland M. Or even better yet, if we're going to use sports analogies, how about when they replace the Indians logo with a plain C? Like, I don't know what's this recent transition over the last 20 years to make logos as boring as possible, but logos are supposed to be recognizable and oftentimes like catches your eye and brings you to attention. This literally looked like a bar of cheese that you just draw Cracker Barrel on. It looked horrendous. And I'm so glad, thankfully, when people bitch enough, they act on it. And Cracker Barrel has since rescinded it, and they're going back to the old logo. Maybe they add, the Confederate flag and other things that make Cracker Barrel great. But I think it was warranted that the crash out was what it occurred. Now, is there bigger issues in this world besides the Cracker Barrel logo? Honestly, probably not. But maybe the comments can decide that. But the outcry over a logo is what's comical to me.
Yeah, and it's a bunch of people who I know don't go to Cracker Barrel. I don't know why it became like some right wing talking point where can you believe they're destroying America? They took away Cracker Barrel. Like, Cracker Barrel is not an iconic American restaurant. The food there is bland. They have a country store, which is okay. Then they just make it like this okay interior design where they're gonna redesign the inside as well, where the logo itself literally, I can pull up a template in Canva right now, and it's probably going to look exactly like the Cracker Barrel logo. It's something that I could literally just search corporate template in Canva, and it would just give me that logo. Like, if you're going to rebrand, then actually rebrand to do something. But for me, this just feels like a marketing ploy where no one was really talking about Cracker Barrel before. So let's get a bunch of people outraged, then we'll come out, apologize, and maybe we'll get some more business from it. But it could end up just destroying their entire brand, because like IHOP is iconic, but like IHOP's logo really wasn't that iconic to begin with. Neither is like Waffle House. It's just, Waffle House in the yellow like background, really. So it's, you didn't need to do this, and you already had a cool logo. It just felt unnecessary for them to do it. But it's just funny to see how many people were that outraged about it, where you have boomers posting pictures like, you see this Cracker Barrel parking lot? Typically on a Saturday night, it's popping. There's only
Oh yeah.
one car there. You darn messed up this time.
Yes, Virginia will never recover from Cracker Barrel's design changes. That's the thing, is like I wouldn't have even noticed this logo change until I was back in Virginia, where I inevitably go to Cracker Barrel, because that seems to be the only place that I'll ever have Cracker Barrel, because I never would ever have it in Phoenix, and I would never have it in Austin, and I certainly wouldn't have it back home either. So It's unfortunate. This is really a big hit to the South, and for your Confederate friends, give them a hug or something because this is a big thing for them. But thankfully, they rescinded it. It reminds me of when everyone was bitching about the Sonic movie and how terrible Sonic looked, and everyone's like, "This movie is going to be a massive failure." So everyone bitched and moaned enough, so they're like, "Wait a minute." Nobody likes these changes at all. This isn't like when there's like a Snapchat update and people bitch about it and move on. No, this is like the South was ready to put their pitchforks back up and cause a war again. So they did the right thing. Cracker Barrel restores their tradition as always.
Yeah, and they end up firing the guy whose marketing idea it was, and he tried to pivot on X and say, "Well, I wanted to change the logo to something bland and corporate so he'd get some outrage, and then, any bad news, any like publicity is good publicity essentially." But they end up spending $700 million on this, and now they've lost $176 million from it already.
They've already lost 176 million from this.
I believe so, yeah.
That I mean, I'm not surprised though. I mean, I don't think this was a bit. I don't think this is them trying to generate attention. I just think whoever made the logo was lazy and they wanted to make it extra corporate and bland and boring like all the other logos that have been revamped in the last decade. And then everyone hated it because Cracker Barrel for some reason really strikes, the minds of a lot of people with their logo, very riveting barrel logo that is. But I don't think this was I think they genuinely just had a misstep and they made a mistake. And luckily enough, they're smart enough to rescind it quickly before money, because I feel like this would have actually affected their bottom line down the road.
Yeah, and if you're not in New England, you probably won't get this lore as much, but I don't even think it was as bad when um, Dunkin' Donuts changed their name and logo to just Dunkin'. Like everyone was just confused, more or less. Like, whatever. Still has, seasonal coffee is good enough. It's a New England tradition, but it seems like the South just lost it over this one. Everyone was legitimately angry, and I was all right. If you're that mad about frozen food being microwaved and served to you, more power to you, because I could not care less.
What I could care for, though, is NFL football returning next Thursday. Because next Thursday is, of course, the premiere of the great NFL National Football League returning to our homes once again on Thursday night. Excuse me. Even my allergies are excited. So, NFL football has returned. If you have watched the Brickyard podcast over the last several months in the dark times that is without the NFL, we've been going over each and every division, covering them, predicting how teams will fall. So we've crafted our playoff picture. We're going to ask the great minds of ChatGPT and Gronk what they think the playoff pictures are going to look like. And we'll compare and contrast them according to the Brickyard.
Yeah, so we have the playoff picture pulled up here. So what we'll do first is just go through our divisions and how we had our divisions finishing out here. So starting in the NFC West, we had the Hawks finishing at 5-12, the Cardinals finishing at 8-9, 49ers at 11-6, and the Rams finishing at 12-5. Anything you would change there? Do you still feel good about that?
I feel good. I would say the Niners and Cardinals maybe flip just based on if there's injuries or not. But I think if we're looking at it just today, then that's the perfect ranking.
All right. And then in the North, we have the Bears at 7-10, the Vikings at 8-9, Lions at 13-4, and the Packers at 14-3.
Perfect. I think that's perfect.
And then in the East, we have the Giants at 3-14. We have the Commanders at 9-8. Washington, or the Eagles at 10-7, and Washington winning the division at 11-6, carrying on the tradition of a new division champion each year.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, Giants, they're terrible. They even cut Tommy DeVito, which I thought was sacrilegious of them. I think they'll still be at the bottom. And then I do think the Commanders could win the division. Eagles are going to have a Super Bowl hangover, and the Cowboys, there's just too much drama there. So I'd agree with that, how that's shaken out.
All right, and then we have in the South the Saints finishing at 3-14. We have the Falcons and the Panthers finishing at 9-8, and the Buccaneers winning the division at 11-6.
I like it. I think we gave too many wins to the Saints though.
And then in the AFC, in the West, we have the Chiefs and the Broncos at 12-5 with a tiebreaker there. And then we have the Chargers at 10-7 and the Raiders at 6-11.
I think that's perfect. I would agree with that. Broncos are going to be really good. Chiefs are always good, and the Chargers are always competitive.
And then we have the North with the Ravens at 12-5, the Bengals at 10-7, the Pittsburgh Steelers at 8-1, and then the Cleveland
Naturally,
Browns at 5-12.
that is fitting. As fitting as it gets.
And then we have in the East the Bills at 12-5, the Patriots at 10-7, Miami at 6-11. Wish it could be 9-11, and then the Jets at 5-12.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be exactly how it plays out. I think we nailed those AFC East rankings.
And then in the South, we have Houston at 11-6,
What?
Tennessee at 9-8, the Jaguars
What?
at 5-12, and then the Colts at 7-10, which may be a little bit too high in retrospect. Maybe we flip the Jags and the Colts if we redid this.
Yeah, Jags and Colts maybe flip. But ultimately, I believe in the Texans. I think the Titans are going to be a lot better this year with Cam Ward. So I think we did great. Honestly, I think our playoff pictures are perfect. Maybe we gave too many wins to bad teams, but that's about it.
All right. And then introducing your 2025 2026 NFC playoff picture at the number 7 seed, coming in at 10-7, the reigning Super Bowl champion. We have the Philadelphia Eagles. And then at the 6th seed, we have the 49ers, if healthy, which is a huge if.
Big if.
We have the 49ers at 11-6 as the 6th seed, the Detroit Lions as the 5th seed at 13-4. I think a little bit of a step back, but hopefully their defense will be healthy this year and that will help them tremendously. And then we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the 4th seed at 11-6, the Commanders as the 3rd seed at 11-6, and then we have the Rams as the 2nd seed at 12-5, and the Green Bay Packers with their new star receiver at 14-3 with the bye. That is your 2025-2026 NFC playoff picture. So in round 1, we get a rematch of the divisional round with the Rams and Philadelphia Eagles. We get the Commanders and the San Francisco 49ers with some bad blood there. You have Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan in a head-to-head matchup. Cliff Kingsbury going up against his nemesis from the West and Kyle Shanahan. Debo Samuel also looking to try and get some revenge there. And then the Commanders trying to really break through to that next level in the playoffs. And then we would have Tampa Bay and the Detroit Lions, who have had a little bit of a history of meeting up in the playoffs. So I don't hate that either. Thoughts on that first round?
So we have, just to recap, we have Bucks and Lions, which honestly, if I had to predict today, I think the Bucks finally get over the hump and beat them. And then we have the Commanders and 49ers. Right now, I would take the Commanders currently. And then the last one is
Rams
what's the
and Eagles.
Rams and Eagles. That's electric. It's hard to see the Eagles as the 7th seed, but it is the Super Bowl hangover. But
They're 10-7
Rams
though.
10-7. Yeah, we're not hating on the Eagles by any means. The Rams last game that was so close in the divisional round, it came down to ultimately the weather and a couple of plays going the Eagles' way. I think the Rams probably win that game this time around.
Yeah, no, I could definitely have seen the Rams winning last year. It seemed like the snow really hindered them, and Kyron Williams just not being the same player that Saquon Barkley is. But there was a chance, and the Rams made them uncomfortable in that game. So I could definitely see the Eagles maybe limping into the playoffs with some injuries because of the previous Super Bowl run, and the Rams being able to take them out if Stafford is fully healthy and clicking on all cylinders with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. Because we've seen Devontae Adams the past couple of years. It was the Derek Carr experiment. Then he went to the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, and his numbers were still decent. But now that he's going to be the number two to Puka Nakua and Matthew Stafford loves feeding his guys, definitely think the Rams could take a step forward next year.
100%.
And then I disagree. I think if the Lions defense is healthy with the way Jahmyr Gibbs finished the season, I do think that the Lions would beat the Buccaneers. And then the Commanders and the 49ers, if the Niners are fully healthy, for me, that's still a toss up. And I could see maybe, I don't know, the hype getting the best of the Commanders and experience overall just winning. But you would essentially have the duo of the biggest meltdown in the Atlanta Super Bowl going head to head. The offensive coordinator and the head coach responsible for that meltdown. Which team's going to choke harder? Is it going to be the Commanders or the 49ers?
What concerns me about the Niners, though, is that I don't think their receiver core is great because they have Juwan
No.
Jennings, so I respect. Brandon Ayuk's coming back from injury. Will he be full strength? And then it's Ricky Parcells, who I think is good, but the Commanders just feel like they have more firepower. So that's why I would pick the Commanders. But I can definitely see like Jaden Daniels is a younger quarterback. It's his second year. Maybe he has a sophomore slump. And in the playoffs, when he shines bright with expectations on him, last year there wasn't any expectations. He was just a rookie. So I don't hate that pick. I would still pick Commanders, but I see the vision.
And then, so you could have Packers and Rams, and then I still think Lions and or you would have Rams and Commanders, and I still think it would be Lions and Packers in the divisional round personally.
I'll stay with Lions and Packers for the matchup, and oof, that's gonna be a
Best
war.
of
I think that
three.
comes down to that's gonna come down to who's the healthiest, how on game is Jordan Love gonna be, how good is Jared Goff gonna be. Ooh, that's tough. I might pick the Lions there, honestly, because the Packers defense I have question marks with. The Lions, I think, have done enough to give me hope that their defense will be good. As long as not everybody on their defensive line gets hurt, that would definitely help.
Yeah, and then we can have Rams and Lions in the conference championship.
The script's looking good right
Or
now.
a rematch of last year. That meltdown, Detroit looking for some revenge against the Commanders.
Honestly, the script is telling me it's going to be Lions and Rams. That would be poetic, to be honest. Imagine if the Lions make the Super Bowl, which they haven't done since the 50s, and it's against Matt Stafford, his last swan song. They beat the Rams to officially win the trade again for Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. That would be poetic, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. So that is our NFC playoff picture. And we tried ChatGPT earlier, but I'm going to ask Grok what it thinks the NFC playoff picture is going to be. And we'll see how we compare to what AI thinks. Because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's loading right now. I did one like test with ChatGPT and the AFC was pretty similar, but the NFC was way off.
Yeah, the
So
NFC, they had the fucking what in my prediction with the AFC, they had the Colts in there. I'm like, no, I don't know what crack you're smoking.
so right now they have the Eagles at the 1 seed,
Okay.
they have the Lions at the 2 seed, the Rams at the 3 seed, the Falcons at the 4 seed, and
Spicy.
then they have the Vikings at the 5th seed at number 5, who just
That's not
added
true.
Adam Thielen. So, I mean, you have Adam Thielen, Jordan Addison will come back eventually with Justin Jefferson. I mean, at wide receiver, that team does have a lot of firepower right now. Then it has the Commanders there and the Packers. So, really, the only difference is you swap the Buccaneers and the Falcons, and then the Vikings and the 49ers. So it's only two teams off from what we had.
Yeah, I don't know what they're thinking about with the Vikings.
Yeah, Falcons, I kind of get too. But
I
what did
see.
ChatGPT pull up for you?
Oh God. So let me pull it down here because their prediction was a nightmare. So NFC predictions, they have the Lions as the number 1 seed, the Eagles as the number 2 seed, the Niners as the 3 seed, the Buccaneers as the 4 seed, the Viking. This looks like they just did the very last year's predictions. What are they doing here? Because I'm looking at it and this literally looks exactly like how they had it last year. Um, and then they have the Packers and then the Commanders as the 7th seed. So this is quite literally the exact same, pretty much the exact same time from last year. Wild card matchups would be Eagles, Commanders, Niners, Packers, and Bucks, Vikings. So maybe not identical, but fairly similar.
Yeah, Chat GPT is like, how about we just copy paste what last year was?
Boo. Boo Sam Altman.
That's where Chat GPT can't see like surprise teams, can't really see the vision. Um, I don't know, but let's move on to our AFC playoff picture here. And at the number 7 seed, we have the New England Patriots entering the playoffs in year one with Mike Vrabel at 10-7. We
Okay.
have at the 6th seed the Cincinnati Bengals, also 10-7.
Okay.
Then we have the Denver Broncos at the 5th seed at 12-5. Houston at the 4 seed at 11-6, and then all in a three-way tie. We had all of these teams at 12-5. We have the Chiefs as the 3 seed, the Ravens as the 2 seed, and the Bills as the 1 seed.
Okay. So,
So that would give us round 1 Ravens and Patriots, and Mike Vrabel has had a lot of success against Lamar Jackson
ooh.
in his time with the Tennessee Titans. Then we would have Bengals and Chiefs and Broncos and Texans.
Yeah, my early thoughts. I think the Broncos beat the Texans there. I think the Broncos are going to be really good, and their defense is going to be really good. And so I think the Broncos beat the Texans there. And then we have Bengals and Chiefs. Amazing game. Bengals, I don't trust the Bengals right now. Their defense is still going to be ass. I'll take the Chiefs. Patriots, Ravens. That's a matchup that I think everyone's going to pick the
Upset.
Ravens. Yeah, that's got upset written all over it, especially because the Patriots are going to have a good running back in Travion Henderson. Drake May, if he is as advertised, that Patriots team's going to be really good. And they have grit. Ravens have expectations on them. They fold. Lamar doesn't always succeed in the playoffs. Patriots upset.
Yeah, no, I definitely see a Patriots upset there. My gut says Broncos, but I think the Texans should still beat them. But I think Denver can definitely go out there and win. And then, yeah, the Chiefs should beat the Bengals. Do I think it's a lock? No, but should still be a really good matchup, especially since you did end up paying Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals actually smartened up and got that deal done. I don't know if you saw that.
I did, yeah. They paid him. I think it's just a 1 year deal, like 30 million.
Yeah,
Well, maybe
but
they can sign him to a long term deal.
that would give us the Patriots and Bills, and then the Chiefs and Broncos in the second round, two divisional matchups.
What would that be? So it'd be
So
Chiefs and Broncos.
and Patriots and Bills. So it'd be two trilogy matchups. And I said, I don't know, I said before the year, like jokingly on the show, I said, I don't know. I think that AFC championship could legitimately be Broncos and Patriots. There's a chance.
Patriots, Bills. Bills have owned them the last 5 years, but this is a different Patriots team. If they make the playoffs, beat the Ravens, and then beat the Bills alongside that, there's a new sheriff in town with the Patriots. The Patriots are going to look a lot greater. So I think that's a very possible possibility. It's going to be hard for me to pick the Broncos to beat the Chiefs, though, because I just feel like the Chiefs have that pedigree. And the Broncos, I still have my questions with Bo Nix. So we'll have early window. I'd still pick the Chiefs.
Still pick the Chiefs. Do you still think the Bills would beat the Patriots and we get another matchup of Bills and Chiefs? Because I just can't see it being back to back years of Bills and Chiefs, even though sometimes that does happen in the AFC Championship. it happen with Joe Burrow. And then Peyton Manning, he won his first Super Bowl in year 9. Josh Allen is now entering year 8 in his NFL career, taking much
Y-
more of a punishment too, physically.
Yeah, I think we would see that again. I feel like the NFL would want to see Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And I feel like they're going to really push for Josh Allen to make the Super Bowl. Like, that's what they're going to want. Now, he's faced the Chiefs now 4 times in the playoffs, and he hasn't beat them at all. Um, I still think we're going to see Bills and Chiefs, though, ultimately. I just feel like the Patriots, they're still not quite contenders yet, but I think if they can beat the Ravens, they're going to have a lot of high momentum, just like what we saw with the Texans last year. I'll still pick the Bills to beat them, though.
Yeah, so would you have Lions and Bills in the Super Bowl, or do you think it would end up being Rams and Bills, where the Rams finally are able to take that step over the Lions, and then potentially you see Matthew Stafford stopping Joe Burrow and Josh Allen from winning a Super Bowl, and then he wins 2 and passes Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I feel like it's not. I can't. Bills and Lions. I feel like it's a really common pick for the Super Bowl, and I don't think it's going to be that. I feel like we're going to most likely see Rams in there. I just don't see Bills and Lions. No, I'm going to pick. I think Rams and Bills makes sense.
Rams and Bills.
And how poetic would it be, like you mentioned, Matt Stafford takes away a Super Bowl from Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, and happens, ultimately propels himself in that top 10 quarterback all time conversation.
And he could definitely be there because a lot of people want to put him there. And then he had so many down years in Detroit where the organization was just terrible with him. And they fired one coach. Really, his only good coach there was Jim Schwartz, and that was the best season. Then they put him through Matt Patricia, Coach Pencil.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
Yeah, I think.
let's look at what Grok and ChatGPT have for the AFC playoff picture. Do you have what ChatGPT thinks of it?
Yeah, it's a fucking nightmare, actually. So, first seed is the Baltimore Ravens with the bye. 2 seed is the Bills. 3 seed is the Chiefs. 4 seed is the Bengals. Makes sense now. Chargers at the 5th seed. Texans at the 6th seed. Indianapolis Colts as the 7th seed.
What?
That's where you lose me. That's where ChatGPT is not firing on all cylinders. Somebody check with this clanker.
Somebody definitely check with ChatGPT there because that is absolutely outrageous. I mean, you have the Indianapolis Colts in the playoffs with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson there. Did they have them winning the division or the Texans winning the division?
No, the Colts are the 7th seed, but I still like Daniel Jones. I know Jonathan Taylor's on that team. You have Michael Pittman. You drafted a tight end, but I don't trust anybody on that. I don't trust anybody on that defense. I don't know if I trust Shane Steichen anymore. So that's a nightmare.
If anyone is going to make the playoffs and there's two teams in the playoffs from the AFC South, it's probably going to be the Titans if I had to bet money on it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Titans have more momentum. I trust Brian Callahan a little bit more. And they've also made some nice additions, like Cam Ward compared to Will Levis. I think that's a big upgrade there. And then you have Kelvin Ridley to pair alongside. You signed Tyler Lockett, who I still think is reliable. So they have a lot of reliable pieces for the Titans. It's just, are they ready yet? That's the real question.
Yeah, and it'll be will they be able to catch people like surprise because it felt pretty similar with the Commanders. It's just going to be is it going to be the right coach to lead them for this team? So that'll be the interesting thing here for the Titans. And how good
What's
is Cam Ward going to be? Because he looked decent in preseason.
Yeah, he looked pretty decent. This matchup that it would have would be Bengals Chargers, Chiefs Texans, Bills Colts for round one. And I think Bills would kill the Colts. Bengals and Chargers, I would take the Bengals. And Chiefs and Texans, I would take the Chiefs.
For sure. And then Grok has the pretty similar to us, actually, except for one team here. It has the Kansas City Chiefs at the number 1 seed, the
Okay.
Buffalo Bills at the 2 seed, Ravens at the 3 seed, Texans at the 4 seed. So essentially, 1 through 4, we have the same divisional winners as Grok AI. And
Respect.
then we have the Chargers at number 5, the Broncos at number 6, and then the Bengals or Steelers at number 7. So really, outside of the Chargers, you just swap the Patriots, and then Grok is the closest for the AFC of any AI that we have.
We are sponsored by Grok, by the way. No, I like it. I would pick the Bengals over the Steelers, but we know how the Bengals start in September, and the Steelers are always in the mix. So I think that's a very safe pick for Grok. That would set up for, would that be Bills and Steelers in round one for 2 and 7?
Yes, it'd be Bills and Steelers or Bills and Bengals.
Ooh, first round, Burrow and Allen. That's
That'd be tough. I
that would
still
be
think the
tough.
Bengals could do it because while the Bills are good, their wide receiver room, the thing that scares me with Buffalo, and this isn't me just hating on them, but I feel like their receiving core just is very thin. So if one of them or two of them goes down, I just don't see them having much of a shot to go far and win a Super Bowl. Especially with that receiving core, when you're going to be going up against teams that are much more explosive, and your defense is old at this point, and it has had
Yeah.
injury issues in the past. So typically with the Bills, last time they made the conference championship, it took them how long to get back?
Yeah, it took them a few years. I know, like the receiver core. I like Khalil Shakir. I think he's a solid. He's a good. He's not a great number one, but he's a solid number one. They signed Gabe Davis, which he has a couple of those games that he's infamous for. Um, and then I saw that they re-signed Jordan Poyer as well. He left, went to the Dolphins, came back this year. So I would agree. Their defense does look a little shaky, and their offense, I have my questions with. I trust their running game a lot more, though, these days. The Bengals, I just don't know if they can stop anybody with that defense.
Yeah, it does give me hope though that they'll at least have Trey Hendrickson. So you'll have somewhat of a pass rush, but I definitely think they'll be able to outscore anyone on any given Sunday, especially when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But the Bengals this year are just giving me of this vibe where Zach Taylor's probably, it will take Zach Taylor getting fired for them to go on a legitimate playoff run. Just with how they looked, because they played Joe Burrow in preseason and he almost died in preseason. Did you see the video of him playing and his offensive line completely broke down? If your offensive line isn't ready, why are we playing Joe Burrow? Now we have rookie players who you had a contract dispute with for your first overall pick in the first round, and he's hitting Joe Burrow in practice now, and fights are breaking out. I get like fights are normal and it's a good thing. It's definitely a part of bonding, especially in the NFL, but it just seems like Zach Taylor has overstayed his welcome at this point, and it might be a year too late, and then you're wasting another year of Joe Burrow's career.
Yeah, I just think sometimes in the NFL, it has to do with momentum. Sometimes you can have the best roster and you're still disappointing. We've seen that countless times. And I worry with the Bengals, like they're super top heavy. They have T. Higgins, they have Joe Burrow, they have Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson. But after that, there's a lot more question marks. And I like Chase Brown as well. But I fear that the energy in the locker room just feels different, right? You've had your contract disputes with T. Higgins now, Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, and then with all of these different, starts that you've had where you're 1-5, and you have to battle through to even contend for the playoffs at the end of the season. I feel like they've underperformed since the Super Bowl pretty dramatically, and so ultimately, I just feel like the energy's bad. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals miss the playoffs again because of that. Because I don't know if Zach Taylor doesn't seem to be the head coach for them ultimately, compared to everybody else that he has. Like Lamar has John Harbaugh, Bills. They have Sean McDermott, who's been solid for them, and then obviously Andy Reid. He's definitely the weakest of those four as a head coach.
Do you think there's a coach that has a hotter seat in the NFL than Zach Taylor right now? Or do you think the Bengals are just one of those organizations where you look at how long they stuck with Marvin Lewis, they really don't care if they make it or win a Super Bowl, which is
That
genuinely the fear of everyone with Joe Burrow being in Cincinnati is maybe the ownership just really doesn't care about winning and having to pay Zach Taylor and another head coach. It's a money thing for them.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other coach in the NFL that has as hot of a hot seat because looking at the NFC, I don't think anybody really stands out to me. Maybe like the Cardinals head coach, but again, I don't think the pressure is the same for the Colts as it is for the Bengals. The Bengals, the fact that you have a generational talent, a guy that some would put as the second best quarterback in the NFL, and you guys are consistently missing the playoffs after you guys were this close to winning the Super Bowl a few years ago and your roster has only continued to deplete its sense, like I just feel like he's lost the locker room. So I think for sure he's definitely in the hot seat.
Yeah, I'd say him, and then probably the two hottest seats in the NFL right now should be Zach Taylor and Mike McDaniel for me personally.
That's true. Yes, the Dolphins. Yeah, he. I think the Dolphins are under less pressure, but I also think if you can't beat anybody when it's below 40 degrees, when you play most of your games in December and January, that's a really bad sign. And the fact that you can't beat winning teams. What do you have to do in the NFL to win the Super Bowl? You have to beat winning teams, great teams, dare I say. So, like, Sean, I honestly, Mike McDaniel is going to be probably fired before the end of the season. But as far as like pressure wise, I think Zach Taylor's under the most pressure.
Yeah, and Mike McDaniel's like people thought he had this weird charm, but for me, it's just kind of cringy. Like he is trying to impersonate Joe Mazzulla. He just goes out there. They're like, "Oh, how do you feel today, Mike?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's another day closer to death." Like, what? What are we
Yeah.
doing? And then he's just obtuse on purpose, but it's not funny. He's just kind of a weird guy. And sure, you have great offensive schemes, but you get repeatedly outcoached, and your defenses have been consistently deficient in the regular season at the end of the year. And you haven't been able to put the right defense and defensive coordinator around you. And you haven't been able to figure out how to play without Tua or a consistent run game because your running backs have been consistently fine. And as soon as the cold weather hits, they disappear because you get really fast running backs that aren't built to play in the cold. And then Tua just gets killed because you have no threat of a run game.
Yeah. 100%. And I feel like Mike McDaniels could be one of those guys who's better as a coordinator because I feel like he's the type of guy where that charm might work better as like an offensive coordinator, similar to like I think of like Nathaniel Hackett with the Packers. Everyone's buddy buddy with him, but as soon as he's a head coach and he has to be the boss, he fails miserably. Mike McDaniels, I wouldn't say has failed nearly as miserably as Nathaniel Hackett, but I think his charm works a lot better when he's just one side of the offense compared to running an entire team, which takes so much more pedigree.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting, but I think definitely Zach Taylor and Mike McDaniels probably have the hottest seats as far as first year coaches who are probably going to get fired. Probably Aaron Glenn because
Oh, you
you were
think?
the weakest link of the Lions coaching staff where your defense was consistently the problem and you're the defensive coordinator. And even though you couldn't stop anyone last season, the season before that, and the season before that, and the season before that, suddenly you find yourself as the head coach of the Jets. And I'm going to be the first to say it. I don't think he's a better coach than Robert Sala.
No, of course not. I don't even think Robert Solid did not get a fair shake. If you gave him an opportunity with a sufficient quarterback, you gave him 4 games with Aaron Rodgers, and I think that was completely unfair. You also gave him a full season with Zach Wilson, who has become one of the biggest busts of this last decade as far as quarterbacks are concerned. And then other than that, you're throwing out like the Mike Whites of the world to the world for him. Their defense with Robert Saleh was always elite. Like he was able to draft the Sauce Gardners of the world. He was able to draft the Brees Halls of the world. Like they hit on the drafts. Their defense was sufficient with him, but they never had a good offense. And I don't think that all falls on Robert Saleh. I think he got an unfair shake. And Aaron Glenn, his defense was notoriously terrible for the Lions. Part of the reason why you saw them put up, give up 50 points against the Seahawks a couple of times, the Niners. Their defense was never great. So I think honestly, I would fully believe that Aaron Glenn is going to be out the door.
Yeah, and it was the thing with Aaron Glenn's defense is just the schemes were bad, and sometimes it was just poor communication on the back end. And that was the real issue. Where if you have a really good defensive coordinator who is good at scheming and communication, you can have some games where you don't have these giant errors where you're just leaving a part of the field wide open. At the end of the day, that comes down to coaching, and the Lions surrounded him with a lot of talent last year and the year before that. Granted, half of the team on defense, pretty much the entire defense, did get injured, but consistently there were just massive gaps in communication and coaching. That was the real issue on defense for them the past few years.
And that's why I think like maybe Ben Johnson, that's going to hurt them a lot more as far as like offensive scheme. I think he was a great offensive coordinator. Defensive coordinator, whoever they replaced Aaron Glenn with, I think is going to be an addition. I think Aaron Glenn's better to be an addition by subtraction for the Lions because I think they can replace him with a solid defensive coordinator. Because honestly, I think he was there a little too long, anyways.
But that's some coaches we think are on the hot seat. If you had to look into your crystal ball right now, just how you think the season's going to play out, how we predicted it to go, who would be your early pick for coach of the year and maybe an honorable mention or two?
Yeah, so I think about it like the Broncos a couple of years ago are removed from the Russell Wilson debacle. They moved on, they draft Bo Nix. And now this year, with how we slate him to be and how we slate the Broncos as a whole to be, being one of the surprise teams, Sean Payton is a guy that I think is a high consideration for coach of the year. So I would definitely shout him out. I'm going to shout out Mike Vrabel as well for a Patriots team that last year was abysmal. They drafted fourth overall. They made some big splashes in free agency. They might have drafted their quarterback with Drake May. If they can turn around and make the playoffs, and especially if they can beat and win a playoff game, he should be in consideration as well for coach of the year. And then I think you're always going to have like the Kevin O'Connells of the world, Sean McVays that are always in the mix. My early favorite, though, is going to be Sean Payton.
Yeah, Sean Payton's definitely a good coach of the year because you do have some people who are picking the Broncos to win that division, which is absolutely crazy right now, especially since they've lost the past 9 games to the Kansas City Chiefs that they played, if
I
not
think it's more than
more.
that.
And then for me, we've been giving out a lot of coach of the years just because a team that was previously bad made the playoffs. So I like your shout out of Mike Vrabel, and he is my early pick for coach of the year because I do think that the Patriots are going to make the playoffs. And they have a little bit of an easier schedule just because they've been a low seed over the past few years. And then Drake May from year 1 to year 2, you go from Gerard Mayo to Mike Vrabel, who should have been your head coach the first year. You actually have some receivers around him right now. Looks like you got another scrappy white guy in the 7th round that's really been showing out for the New England Patriots. Who would have thought? You draft another running back. Let's see what we can get next year also from Ramondre Stevenson. And then you load it up on defense. Mike Vrabel's getting in there when they're getting in fights, and everyone loves him as a head coach. Drake May is just the prototypical build that you want for the modern day quarterback, where he's fast, he has a big arm, and he made some ridiculous plays with no help last season. So I definitely think it's going to be Mike Vrabel. And I could see someone like if the Packers are the 1 seed in 14-3 and as good as we think they can be, I could see Matt LaFleur also picking up a coach of the year nod as well.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I think ultimately, Patriots, I think a lot of the time they're going with storylines. Patriots fit the storyline narrative, Broncos fit that narrative, and at this point, the Packers, Matt LaFleur, I believe he's won a single coach of the year, but he's been in the mix pretty much his entire time as a Packers head coach. So I think he's definitely due for another one, especially if they're the best team in football.
Yeah, so that is our prediction for the NFL playoff picture based off how we picked the divisions. We went ahead, shouted out some coaches that could be on the hot seat and the coach of the year. Now, MVP, let's do it two ways. If you had to pick an MVP that was a quarterback next year, because they're always going to give it to a quarterback, who do you think it would be?
Well, at this point now, we have the big four quarterbacks, right? Mahomes has won multiple, Lamar's won multiple, Josh Allen just won his. So my early prediction, as long as the Bengals can get their shit together, Joe Burrow is going to be in the mix. I think just for the sake that they gave Josh Allen an MVP, they gave Lamar one. He definitely got a little shafted, just based on how he performed last year. So if the Bengals can be a playoff team, I think Joe Burrow is next in line for MVP. For looking at other quarterbacks to shout out, if Jaden Daniels continues to make his ascendance to greatness, then I think Jaden Daniels is another guy that can definitely be in that MVP conversation.
I'm going to go with someone a little bit out of pocket and random, but this guy, the first few years of his career, went through a new offensive coordinator every single year. He went through
Never
pretty
the
much
same.
a new team every single year. And this is the first time he's been in a consistent situation where he's been able to build rapport with his wide receivers. And now he has a legitimate dual threat running back who can catch out of the backfield in Bucky Irving. Why not Baker Mayfield for MVP? And honestly, he's someone who has thrown a lot of touchdowns, but he's thrown a lot of interceptions. But sometimes you just have one of those years where you're just excellent. And if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win a division where the Panthers are scrappy, where you have a scrappy Atlanta Falcons team and they're able to come out on top, Baker Mayfield throws for, say, 45 touchdowns, 12 picks, maybe rushes in 5 touchdowns as well and has 50 total. I could definitely see Baker Mayfield doing it. And it's not crazy because we've seen people like Matt Ryan win the MVP before. And I don't think Baker's that far off from someone like Matt Ryan. Overall, Matt Ryan has had a better career, but he was also with Roddy White, Julio Jones, Tony Gonzalez his entire career as well. Or Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones and Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I like that Baker poll. I feel like if you're talking about the NFL fandom, nobody's going to hate Baker Mayfield winning an MVP because I feel like of all the quarterbacks, the one that everybody loves the most has to be Baker Mayfield. Like everybody else, obviously we have our great top tier, top four quarterbacks that everybody loves, but Baker Mayfield is just one of the guys that I feel like everybody, all the fandom adores. Like, how do you hate Baker Mayfield? He's amazing. So I like the Baker Mayfield shout out, especially because he still has, he's got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin who are reliable. You have Bucky Irving. Cade Otton is a mighty fine tight end, dare I say, as well. And then they've also drafted a few wide receivers as well that look to be performing well. Plus, they have a good defense, good coach. So I appreciate the Baker Mayfield shout.
So I have Baker Mayfield as my MVP if it goes to a quarterback. However, I'll give you some time to think of this one, who you would want to be the MVP if it isn't a quarterback. For me, it's simple. If a player that is not a quarterback wins MVP next year, there's no other right answer than Jameer Gibbs. Jameer Gibbs had 1,662 yards, and he led the league in scrimmage touchdowns last year, where he had 20 touchdowns, led the league in running back as far as running backs and wide receivers, where he had 16 rushing touchdowns, 4 receiving touchdowns. I think he's going to pick up exactly where he left off. And especially since you have Ben Johnson leaving, Jared Goff is going to rely on him a lot. I think this is going to be a very heavy Jameer Gibbs season for the Detroit Lions, especially with some of the pieces that they've lost on the offensive line. So if the NFL does a player justice that is not a quarterback and it doesn't turn into the quarterback award, I think Jameer Gibbs has a legitimate chance of getting 30 touchdowns as a running back and 2,000 total scrimmage yards next year. And I don't think that's really an insane statement because with someone like Ben Johnson, he tries to get really creative, spread the ball around, get it to Sam Laporta, Jamison Williams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, where if you're a new coordinator, you have to rely on your studs here. And that's going to be someone like Jameer Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who are the two most reliable weapons on that team. And then you'll look to someone like Jamison Williams and Sam Laporta. But for a team that's just trying to maintain and get back to the playoffs, I really think Jameer Gibbs is going to be the driving force, and he was the most dominant player for them in that loss versus the Commanders.
I don't think it's crazy to say 2,000 scrimmage yards because last year he had 1,900. So I think even 2,500 is attainable for him. So I appreciate that shout out for him. I'm going to also shout out another running back because I think he's in a situation where the receiver core is like maybe a little shaky. You have a essentially a rookie quarterback in Michael Penix. Bijan Robinson has the talent, both receiving wise and running wise, to just have one of those just insanely great seasons. His offensive line is fairly good as well. So I think he's got the capability to rush for 2,000 yards. He's a receiving back as well. He can get some catches out of the backfield. So if we're using running backs as a shout, I know he's got the talent to do it. And I think the Falcons could lean heavily on him because I feel like he's going to be the focal point of that offense.
Yeah, he could definitely be. And I've seen a lot of people picking Bijan Robinson as their fifth option for MVP, where you have people putting Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen, Burrow there, and then throwing in Bijan Robinson a lot. So definitely could be interesting. I just don't think he's had as much pop in the NFL as someone like Jameer Gibbs, where I feel strongly that Jameer Gibbs has just been a much more dominant player and a much more consistent player.
Yeah, I would agree. They've had a better offensive line. There's been more talent around him. I feel like what is attractive for Bijan though is the fact that he is the main focal point. Where with the Lions, you can point to Amon Ra, you can point to Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. The Falcons though, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, who I think is a mighty fine receiver, but I feel like the Falcons, their main bread and butter is going to be feeding Bijan as much as possible. And you could potentially see 400 carries out of that guy. Honest to God.
Yeah, no, they could definitely try and run him into the ground. So you would have Joe Burrow as your MVP, and then if it's not a quarterback, it would be Bijan Robinson, and then I would have Baker Mayfield and Jameer Gibbs at MVP.
I would love to put a wide receiver on this, but wide receivers never win MVP. It's always either a quarterback or running back. So that's why I feel like we got to shout out a running back because wide receiver. I mean, we had Cooper Cup have what 2,000 yards essentially, break every record, and he didn't get it. So clearly, it
Triple
can't be a wide
crown.
receiver. He won the Triple Crown. So like, if he can't win it, if Justin Jefferson couldn't win it a few years ago, if Tyreek Hill couldn't win it a few years ago, then I just don't think there's any way that a wide receiver is ever going to win MVP, unless if it's somebody on the defensive side, in which case there's plenty of guys to shout out there.
Yeah, and that's how we see the NFL playing out next year. And then NFL.com has an article just with 10 bold predictions on how the NFL season they think is going to play out next year. And then starting at number 10 for this supposed to be their hot takes, they think Kirk Cousins will start for another team this year.
I mean, sure, future Hall of Famer Kirk Cousins finds a job. Feel like this is probably going to be like Miami. If Tua goes down, maybe
That's
they
what I
want to
was
vie
thinking.
further. Yeah, like Miami maybe makes sense there. If the Colts Daniel Jones disaster is completely abysmal, maybe they give him a call. So that's not completely crazy. I would say there's plenty of teams with head coaches fighting for their lives. Kirk Cousins gets a call.
Yeah, and as bad as Daniel Jones is, what I can understand with Shane Steichen is at least he's similar to Anthony Richardson as far as a play style where they're both taller, more physical running quarterbacks. So in that situation, I kind of get it where you just want a similar player in your system so you don't have to change the whole playbook.
Yeah.
And then at number 9, CeeDee Lamb will break the NFL receptions record this season. I don't think so, just because you got George Pickens, and George Pickens whines a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a far stretch. If you want to say receiving yards record, maybe I'll hear you out. But receptions level, like, no, I think there's plenty of other mouths to feed on that offense. And George Pickens is going to steal away probably at least 130 targets from you minimum. So that's a bad take.
And then at number 8, Travis Hunter will be more impactful as a cornerback than a wide receiver his first season.
I don't think that's true. I don't know. I mean, I think Travis Hunter, I mean, he's been burned in practice many times so far in training camp as a corner. And I feel like they need him more as a wide receiver. So I would disagree with that. I don't think that's true.
Yeah, they need help on offense. It's just one of those weird situations where it's something we haven't seen in the NFL before where a guy is trying to play both sides of the football. And I don't think you got the right head coach at all to navigate that. Like,
Not at
you
all.
would think you would want to bring in one of these veteran coaches who would really have a strong presence who could figure out that situation, but you end up getting a absolute dork who looks like a psychopath in his first press conference.
Yeah, I also think like is he is he really going to play both sides of the ball? Because wide receivers get their fucking ass beat every single play, and then for him to on the other side of the ball do the same thing as a corner, I just think that he's either going to get hurt or beat to shit, or either way, I just don't. I think he's going to have to play one side of the ball, and the Jaguars are going to need him more on offense than defense.
Yeah, especially since you invested so much money in Trevor Lawrence already, and he's had some big warning signs. So at this point, Trevor Lawrence needs as much help as possible on the offensive end. So hopefully they play him at receiver. But it's one of those situations where I don't have any strong opinions, and I really just want to see how it plays out because I can't remember a situation like this in the past.
Yeah, I can't either. I don't know of a situation. I don't think there has been a situation in the NFL that's been like this. The closest thing that we have is in baseball with Shohei Ohtani, and that's been super successful, but it's a lot different pitching one day and batting a next compared to playing two sides of the ball in the most physical sport on the planet. It's a completely
Yeah.
different sport. That's the only comparison I would have.
Yeah, so we'll see. And then at number 7, we have Ashton Genty will run for 2,000 yards.
That's a dumb take. I mean, I understand it. Like Ashton Genty was electric with Boise State, but at the same time, he also was a running back for Boise State. And there's been like a number of successful Boise State running backs, but the last one I believe was Matt Breida, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look up exactly the running back echelons that we're in. But I don't think I don't. First of all, their offensive line isn't good. Ashton Genty did not look great in the preseason either. So I think that's just a lazy take, personally.
And then at number 6, Daniel Jones will win comeback player of the year. What is
Maybe
he
he's gonna
coming
wipe.
back from exactly?
I don't know. I mean, the only comeback I can see is him wiping cum off of his back, maybe. But I don't think comeback player of the year. That just doesn't seem. That just no. That what again? Like I don't understand. Like comeback player of the year means you're ultimately overcoming an obstacle, right? Like when I don't know, Alex Smith like basically had his legs essentially almost cut off entirely and went out and played football. Or I know he didn't win it, but Damar Hamlin, dying and going back and playing football. But all he did was come back from being terrible at football and getting benched and going on to another team. So what exactly is he coming back from? I don't know.
Yeah, and can you see Daniel Jones being a Geno Smith project for Shane Steichen?
No.
Or I don't know. Would you rather have Miami Ryan Tannehill or New York Giants Daniel Jones? Like, I would still take Miami Ryan Tannehill. I thought he was a fine quarterback in a horrible organization. And then he was given two of the most explosive weapons in Tennessee in AJ Brown, Derrick Henry, and having a legitimate head coach with Mike Vrabel, and he brought them to a conference championship. I just can't see Daniel Jones getting you to a conference championship, even if he had that Tennessee Titans team.
No, I don't think he can either, especially because I look at the offense that he has for the Colts. Jonathan Taylor, he's great in his own right. Michael Pittman is a solid receiver, but he is no AJ Brown. And then outside of him, like I know you drafted Tyler Warren as a tight end. We'll see how good he is, but I just don't think the personnel around him is going to elevate him, especially because he's also had some pretty successful players in the past. He could lean on Saquon, which brought him to the playoffs a few years ago. And then this past year, he had Malik Neighbors, who's no slouch either. So he's had help. I just don't think the Colts are going to be the ones that elevate him to that next level.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's definitely a gamble, but at the end of the day, you still have Anthony Richardson, who's a young player, and he's still younger than some of the rookies coming into the NFL today. So he could, Anthony Richardson, you could make the most of a case for being a Geno Smith type player where he just needs 2 or 3 years to sit on the bench and learn the position.
Yeah, and learn how to avoid tackles and, throw the football.
Yeah, sit down and be humble. And then you have at number 5, Caleb Williams will throw for 4,500 yards and 35 touchdowns.
This one I can see more of. He threw for I think 3,800 last year, and I think he had like 25 touchdowns. So if Ben Johnson is the prince that's promised, as with Caleb Williams, I think he can definitely throw for over 4,000 yards and over 30 touchdowns. 4,535 touchdowns. I don't know if he gets to the yards amount, but touchdowns I think is attainable. He's got all the weapons he needs. He's got Cole Kmet, DJ Moore. He even has D Swift in the background. That's going to help a little bit. So he's got help. So I think he can definitely get there.
Yeah, new offensive coordinator Roma Dunze. I don't think he's quite going to get there, but I do think he'll have around 4,100 yards and probably 29, 31 touchdowns next season. Ben Johnson definitely likes running the ball more than he does passing it, which is how he's going to help Caleb Williams succeed.
For sure.
And then at number 4, the Broncos will snap the Chiefs' streak of 9 straight AFC West championships.
I see the vision. We had them tying in our playoff picture with how great their defense is going to be. And also, they drafted a running back. Bo Nix is a year older, and they got some new receivers as well. I think it's not that crazy, but I would still probably leave the Chiefs, but I see the vision there. I respect the hot take.
Yeah, and we had them tying, and one of those takes each year is just going to be the Chiefs losing their division. The Chiefs feel a little bit off this year. You have the whole Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift engagement, but it does seem that like the Chiefs are looking for a little bit of revenge this year. They have been disrespected a lot this offseason. Rashee Rice is suspended for 6 games now, so you're not going to have him for a bit. So maybe you get off to a slow start and then finish strong. But I can't see the Chiefs as a wild card. I still think they will win the division.
Yeah, I can see it.
And then at number 3, the Eagles will be the first team to repeat as NFC East champs in 21 years. This is something that I would not touch with a 10-foot pole.
I mean, it's one thing if it happens like 5 consecutive years, 10 consecutive years, but this is going on almost 25 consecutive years. And we also have the Cowboys and the Commanders in that division and a Super Bowl hangover potentially, which is something that should always be on alert for any of the teams that make the Super Bowl. You have 3 really good teams. So I can't say that that's not a lock at all by any means. We picked the Commanders to win the division. I stand by that. They made some additions. I just feel like when it's that much of a coincidence, I just don't see that breaking.
Yeah, so you're telling me the media that after the first year where they um, got blown out by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after they lost the Super Bowl. Everyone was calling for Nick Sirianni's job as soon as he got hired. Now that same exact media is picking the Eagles to snap a quarter century long curse. Are you kidding me? So you go from Nick Sirianni isn't the head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's not the guy to no, actually, we're going to pick him to snap a quarter century long curse in the NFC East. I just don't see it, especially with how the Commanders played. And it's just one of those things where fluky things happen. Saquon Barkley has been healthy for you over the past few years. That's not necessarily the norm. Your defense is where you can make the argument where their defense was definitely a younger unit last year, but after you make it to the Super Bowl and win, how motivated really are you to get back there? There's not as much of that push.
Yeah, because essentially now, like, you've essentially played what is that, an additional 4 games that you end up playing, which is like a quarter of a season. You have a shorter off season, and then you're going into the season. Everyone's basically reached the echelons of NFL greatness at this point. Are they going to be motivated to win back-to-back Super Bowls? I feel like everybody is just happy to have won a Super Bowl at this point. So I see a Super Bowl hangover for the Eagles, not dramatically, but winning back-to-back divisions, I think, is going to be really tough in that division.
Also, how many Super Bowls do you think Jalen Hurts would need to win for people to legitimately put him in the same conversation as Josh Allen, Lamar, Joe Burrow, and Mahomes? Because now he's been to 2 Super Bowls and he won one, and people aren't treating him with the same respect that they would treat someone like Josh Allen or Lamar, where he goes out there and he does his thing in the playoffs and does exactly what he needs to do to win. And it's similar to what Tom Brady did with the Patriots. Now, did he win the first Super Bowl? No, but he was going up against probably the second best quarterback of all time, and it came down to one fumble in that game and a coin flip.
Yeah, like he's a couple plays away from 2 Super Bowl rings already. I don't think I feel like he needs to win like 3. The way that they're treating Jalen Hurts, because of all the help he has, I feel like he needs to win at least 3 for them to fully give him his respect. Maybe he gets it with his second ring potentially, but with the amount of help that he has, I just don't think they're going to give him the respect that he deserves, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think it would take him snapping a quarter century curse and then potentially leading his team without Saquon Barkley this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And then at number 2 on this list, they have Joe Burrow winning MVP this year, which you had him as your MVP.
Very smart people over there at the NFL Network. They know a thing or two about football, it sounds like.
And then at number 1, they have the Bills winning the Super Bowl, which won't happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's I understand the vision, but again, I don't know. The receiver core, like Khalil Shakur, I like him, but you don't have a great receiver core. Your defense isn't outstanding either. It's a great prediction because we want to see Josh Allen win a Super Bowl eventually, but he can't beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, and their receiver core is the weakest of all the 4 major teams in that conference. So I just don't think it's going to happen, sadly.
Yeah, it for me, it's the receiver core and just how old their defense is at this point. And at a certain time, you have to look at coaching to be the reason why you're not advancing further in the playoffs and losing to a team 4 times. You broke the record for most times lost to a team in the playoffs. It's absolutely ridiculous for the Buffalo Bills. And really, the only reason that they had the Bills winning the Super Bowl, it said that they've had too much heartache the past few years. But I can't see them just bouncing back this year after losing to the Chiefs again and suddenly getting up. Now we have to go grind through another season and hope we can win to the Super Bowl. You talk about Zach Taylor maybe falling on deaf ears in the locker room. Well, if he is at this point, you can also point to Doug McDermott, who maybe he's had more consistent success, but he's had more failures. I feel like as a
I
coach,
mean,
where you lose to a team 4 times and you haven't beat the Chiefs in the playoffs.
yeah, I mean, like they mentioned like too much heartbreak. I'm like, have you ever watched sports before? Have you seen teams like the Chargers who consistently have their hearts broken? Have you seen the Cubs in baseball and the Red Sox in the 1900s and how they suffered? Like heartbreak, that shit can last decades. And the Bills are also, you look at their history, they lost a Super Bowl by missing a field goal. They've made to 4 consecutive Super Bowls and lost all of them. They proceeded to draft guys like EJ Manuel and a bunch of other heartbreaks that they've had in the Bills franchise the last 30 years. It's great that they have Josh Allen, and it's unfortunate they haven't beaten the Chiefs. But just because they've had a lot of heartbreak doesn't mean they're due for success. Look at the Lions the last 70 years before this. Look at the Chargers history. Look at baseball history, basketball history, NFL history, all the sports. And another thing, like Sean McDermott itself, like you were 13 seconds away from beating the Chiefs and you choked. That was heartbreak for the Bills. Like I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But you were the reason that you lost that game. 13 seconds. You couldn't stop them in 13 seconds. That's embarrassing. So heartbreak, I think, can still continue.
Yeah, and for me, I would have fired him immediately after that game. If you lose in 13 seconds to a team, it has to be over from that, right? It can't just be Patrick Mahomes and the greatness of Tyreek Hill. That is some epic meltdown that doesn't get talked about enough, and I think it's on par losing a. I think it's on par with blowing a 28-3 lead. Honestly,
Yeah. The one thing I will say with the 28-3 lead in conjunction is that the 13-second game should not be blamed on Josh Allen. Josh Allen had nothing to do with that meltdown at all. That had to do with your defense. So everybody on that defense has to be criticized. The defensive coordinator and Sean McDermott. That is the reason for the meltdown. Josh Allen played exceptional that game.
Josh Allen did play exceptional in that game. He had probably the best playoff run of his career, and they wasted it because they
Yeah.
couldn't hold them down. And also, it's not like they had a bad defense either. They had the number one defense in the regular season that year.
And what soiled it too is like we talk about like Joe Flacco's 2011 Super Bowl run. We've talked about, Brady's couple of Brady's runs in the past. We could have witnessed Josh Allen have the greatest playoff run in quarterback history because he threw 5 touchdowns, 4 incompletions against the Patriots. The Chiefs game, he was nearly perfect as well. And you just soil it because of 13 seconds, which could have easily been like 2 or 3 plays. You stop them. I don't even think they had a timeout. Maybe they had one timeout. And that's ultimately what soiled it for them. So it's just disgraceful because you ruined what could have been like an all time great Super Bowl run for Josh Allen.
Yeah, and who did the Chiefs end up playing that year? Because they ended up facing the Bengals in the conference championship. That was the Bengals and Rams year, right?
It would have been Bills and Rams, which I think the Bills probably they could have definitely beat the Rams that year.
Yeah, and the Bengals, maybe they beat the Bills that year, but also maybe the Bengals never end up getting to the Super Bowl, and then we have an entirely different narrative with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, where there's not an argument for Joe Burrow being better than Josh Allen.
Yeah,
You think of how much that 13 seconds changed how we talk about quarterbacks today.
yeah, 1,000%. Also, I don't know, like if he makes the Super Bowl, is he more likely to win the MVP this previous year, despite all the numbers? Because the numbers point to Joe Burrow winning the MVP last year, or Lamar Jackson had way better stats than Josh Allen this past year, even though Josh Allen is deserving of winning an MVP. But that 13-second game, let's say he goes on and beats the Bengals, makes the Super Bowl, and potentially wins it. I don't think the NFL media is pushing him to win MVP every year following that because I don't think there's as much sympathy because he's already accomplished something that can put him in that conversation.
Yeah, so that's something that definitely would have changed history, and maybe the Bengals beat them that year, um, but you never know because they did beat the Kansas City Chiefs with Tyreek Hill at the peak of his powers, who were able to come back from that 13-second lead. But I definitely think if Josh Allen was able to win that game, he was on a generational run, and that really would have changed the way we look at him, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and it would have separated him as the clear, definitive number two quarterback in the league.
Yeah, and thanks to Sean McDermott, we can't say that.
Yeah, but that brings us to the players that will be impacting the league for the next decade and a half. So, heading into the year, we like to take a look at the previous year's draft, see how it panned out, kind of see who we think are going to be the best rookies as far as the best rookie quarterbacks here. So take us through what happened in the first round of the draft last year and some other notable players.
Right. So last year was the Caleb Williams draft. The Bears had the first overall pick. They drafted Caleb Williams early season. I mean, definitely some struggles for the Bears last year, but I would say so far it's an early progress. I think he's definitely has a high ceiling. But the following pick is Jaden Daniels, who had one of the greatest rookie seasons, if not the greatest rookie season of any quarterback in history, made it to the conference championship with the Washington Commanders. Do you think that their fates would have been different if their quarterbacks switched? So Commanders have Caleb Williams and the Bears have Jaden Daniels.
That's a tough one. Because the Bears are just one of those teams that have always been the quarterback killer. And it is really tough because it seemed like the Bears were on a trajectory to compete for a wild card spot until that Commanders game, where you have the Bears corner taunting the Commanders, and then the Commanders Hail Mary ends up being the spark that lights the fuse for them making that playoff run. But I do think the Bears would have been a little bit better with Jalen Daniels last year. I don't necessarily think that Caleb Williams would have brought the Commanders to a conference championship either. I just don't think he has the intangibles that Jaden Daniels does.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think the Bears would still have struggled. I don't think the Bears would have made the playoffs with Jaden Daniels. I also don't think the Commanders would have made the playoffs with Caleb Williams. I think we would have a totally different NFL landscape if it's flipped. Number 3
For
pick is
me,
Drake May. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, for me, last thing I was gonna say, like as of right now, Caleb Williams is just a taller Kyler Murray.
Taller Kyler Murray, and I feel like he has the potential, if he doesn't succeed this year, to go into that Trevor Lawrence conversation, unfortunately, which I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Number 3 pick is Drake May. I think for him, it's a little early to decide whether he is the prince that's promised, but early on, with how bad that receiver core is, with how bad Jerron Mayo was, for him being able to have 15 touchdowns, 10 picks, I think was a miracle. So ultimately, I think they still have more to see, but I think the Patriots might have gotten their guy.
Yeah, I think. Do you think the Patriots taking Drake May is better than the Chicago Bears taking Caleb Williams just where they drafted him?
The fact that it fell to 3, I don't know if I think the Patriots would have been terrible no matter who their quarterback was, just given their situation. So I think Drake May just fits the Patriots' pedigree more. Caleb Williams, I don't think would have done well in that Boston market at all. Just with the way
They would
Boston
hate
media
him with the
treats,
painted nails and
they would despise Caleb Williams. So I mean, Drake May was we was he was born to be drafted by the Patriots. It just makes sense. North Carolina guy. Um, so I don't think any of the quarterbacks that were taken in the top 3 could have gone to the Patriots except for Drake May.
yeah, and there was like a real discussion before the draft where I believe for a while Drake May was going to be the number 2 guy, and then Jaden Daniels took that spot from him at the end of it.
Yeah, and I think the Commanders would have probably made the playoffs with Drake May, but I don't think they have that insane playoff run that they had. I just think Jaden Daniels he's in that top 5 potential conversation, definitely a top 10 quarterback automatically. But moving down the list here, number 4 overall pick, they have Marvin Harrison Jr. 5th pick was Joe Alt, and then the 6th pick was Malik Neighbors. So 2 wide receivers, Malik Neighbors on the Giants, Marvin Harrison on the Cardinals in this case. If the roles are switched, Marvin Harrison, all intents and purposes, for him having that last name, don't think he lived up to expectations last year whatsoever. Whereas Malik Neighbors, I think, surprised a lot of people, immediately entered that conversation of top 10, top 15 receiver. So I think if the roles were reversed, I feel like Malik Neighbors would have been better for the Cardinals because I just think he entered the league just immediately elite. Whereas Marvin Harrison, I feel like needs a lot more work. So I think the Giants would have struggled with him.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison, he can get better. He was a rookie last year, so I don't want to pile on him. However, I feel the definition of a bust should just be if a player taken after you in close proximity was better. And Malik Neighbors may have been the best offensive player in the draft last year, as far as wide receivers are concerned. So I definitely think that he should have gone number 4 to the Cardinals, if not number 3 to the Patriots. I don't know. Maybe get your house in order before you draft a quarterback. That's just me, though.
One would think, right? Offensive tackle Joe was successful for the Chargers, but who cares? It's offensive lineman. Um, Seventh pick, the Titans took J.C. Latham, offensive tackle. Very cool. Eighth overall pick, Michael Penix. We'll see with Michael Penix. I think he's going to be okay. I don't know if I'm sold on him quite yet, but I think it's too early to tell for Michael Penix.
Yeah, I've liked what I've seen from him. Seeing him on Sunday Night Football versus the Eagles was really the highlight for me last year, where he was able to stay poised. He throws a lot of darts. It just depends on how much help they're going to get him offensively at wide receiver and how well the Atlanta Falcons offensive line is going to hold up. But I do think he can be a good quarterback, but I would think he's going to be more of like a black Jimmy Garoppolo.
And that's not a bad. I mean, that's not a bad thing. Jimmy Garoppolo made it to multiple conference championships, so I can
A
see
Super
that.
Bowl.
I just and a Super Bowl, yeah, Super Bowl winner, dare I say, holding the clipboard for Brady. Um, yeah, I can't really put my grasp on Michael Penix. I am pretty indifferent on him. I think he's going to be an average quarterback in the NFL, but sometimes that's really all you need to make it, to win playoff games. So we shall see. Number 9, they had Roma Dunze for the Bears. Um, he's a guy where I think the situation was just rough for them. I think that he has potential to turn things around. I'm going to say before we talk about him that later in this round, Brian Thomas Jr. is drafted by the Jags. So if we're comparing guys to each other, Brian Thomas was drafted 23rd. Roma Dunze was drafted 9. So I think the Jags might have gotten a better guy.
No, last year the only receiver I would take over BTJ is probably Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
Honestly, I
Receiver
think
core has been.
BTJ should have gone higher or in the top 10. Imagine you have BTJ on the Bears last year, and Roma Dunze was really just drafted that high because Caleb Williams wants to play with his buddy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see if it pans out. Roma Dunze, I think, will be solid, but I can see him being like a Jerry Judy-esque kind of receiver. Solid, but maybe not a number 1. Number 10 was J.J. McCarthy. Haven't seen anything from him, so don't have any opinions of him. I don't think he's going to be exceptional, though.
He's looked fine in preseason. The thing that worries me with him is he didn't.
Sorry, it broke up there. I'm not super sold on J.J. McCarthy. I will say 2 picks later, the Broncos took Bo Nix. And I think Bo Nix is going to be better than J.J. McCarthy. And I think if the
Yeah, and
Vikings had Bo Nix, he probably could have won a playoff game.
yeah, he definitely would have been better than Sam Darnold. He's like the best parts of Sam Darnold and Will Levis. And you
Yeah.
take away all of the horrible habits. He's definitely streaky, but for him as a rookie last year, he definitely showed a lot of promise. Just think of what we saw from rookie Josh Allen, Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts when he was younger. I definitely think Bo Nix could be really good, especially in preseason this year. He's looked elusive, and dare I say, he made some plays similar to Aaron Rodgers or that were Aaron Rodgers esque. And you could end up seeing Bo Nix become an Aaron Rodgers figure if the Broncos are really able to put it together. He's able to get a good feel for the pocket. Aaron Rodgers ended up dropping in the first round of his draft as well. And then I know you weren't a huge fan of Bo Nix coming into it, but he did prove a lot of the people who are skeptical wrong last year, and he's a big physical guy.
Yeah, I think Bo Nix, I think he was comped to Justin Herbert because I think they were in the same quarterback room at some point. And I feel like that conversation could definitely shift this year, especially if the Broncos are as good as we predict them to be, where he could potentially jump Justin Herbert in the quarterback rankings, especially if they're winning playoff games and they're not, blowing 27 nothing leads. I believe in Bo Nix. I wasn't a believer when I started, talking about him. I was definitely a hater to start, but he's proven to me that I think he can be formidable. And I think he could potentially be a top 10 quarterback at some point, probably like the 10 part. But I still think that early on, I like what I've seen from Bo Nix.
Yeah, so definitely excited to see him this year too.
And then we've talked about Brian Thomas Jr., we've talked about Malik Neighbors, but arguably the best weapon drafted in the first round was pick 13, Brock Bowers, who was just immediately going to be everybody knew that Brock Bowers was going to be a monster to start, and he immediately entered the league and became the best tight end in football. Immediately. 112 catches, 1,200 yards, 5 touchdowns on a bad Raiders team with bad quarterbacks as well. Brock Bowers, pick 13.
Yeah, and we'll see how he does this year, especially I just don't know how a 2025-2026 Chip Kelly led offense is going to look this year, especially with how fast paced the Chip Kelly offenses were before. But Brock Bowers, definitely maybe the most unique talent drafted last season. And, Gardner Minshew and O'Connell just said, hey, Brock has got to be out there somewhere. He's someone you can throw it to in triple coverage. And you can say, I feel comfortably that Geno Smith is a step above Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell just because he's a little bit taller. But I wouldn't necessarily say he's going to be a world changer, but I think he'll help Brock Bowers play even better this year. But he already proved that it doesn't matter who his quarterback is, where we've only seen a few people do that. People like DeAndre Hopkins was able to perform without a quarterback most of his career.
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter who Brock Bowers' quarterback is. I think he's going to be the best tight end in football for the next foreseeable future, honestly. Then we get into some defensive players. Colts took Liatu Lutu with the 15th pick. Seahawks took Byron Murphy, not a defensive lineman, but Vikings took Dallas Turner. I'm going to skip the offensive lineman for pick 18. Sorry, Amarius Mims. Pick 19, though, Jared Verse from the Rams, who I believe, if I'm not, yes, he was defensive rookie of the year, whereas these other guys were not, and they're the same position. So for following that, looks like the Colts could have had Jared Verse, or the Seahawks could have had Jared Verse, and they missed on the wrong guy.
Yeah, and the Rams immediately. The thing that's painful is Aaron Donald retires, and then you immediately draft someone who wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. It's not fair.
It's just not fair, especially with the guys taken before you too. Like the Rams were just one step ahead, sadly. Um,
That was
skipping
their
the
first round draft pick in the Sean McVay era too.
Yeah, and they get Jared Verse, who is a freak of nature. So I don't know how the NFL gods allowed that, but respect to Sean McVay for finally don't give him any more first round picks. Give him away again. I'm going to skip the offensive lineman for the Steelers. The Miami Dolphins
Not
picked
good.
Chop Robinson, who was fairly effective for them. Eagles have Quinion Mitchell. And then pick 23 is BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jags. Absolute stud.
Yeah, BTJ definitely one of the top receivers in the draft. Probably just Malik Neighbors above him. You could argue Brock Bowers is just a better overall player, but he's a tight end. But definitely he would be my number 2 wide receiver if we're redrafting.
And then as we go down this first round, Lions took Terrion Arnold, who looks to be somewhat of a hit, formidable corner. Skipping offensive lineman, Cardinals took Darius Robinson, didn't do anything. Xavier Worthy, pick 28 for the Chiefs. And then later down, we have Ricky Parcell for the 49ers. We should see more of him this year. Xavier Legette. And then starting the second round, we have Keon Coleman and the great Lad McConkey.
Yeah, Led McConkey, another solid player looking like a return, one of the Wes Welker, Danny Amendola type players for the Chargers. And the Chargers, I believe, or is the Rams that drafted Danny Amendola. But
I think it was the Rams, if I'm not mistaken.
but
But
he was another solid receiver there. He was basically Justin Herbert's only target last season because Josh Palmer is extremely inconsistent. And then you're relying on Quentin Johnson, who is a 50-50 guy before Jim Harbaugh got there. And he was a little bit better last season, but he was still wildly unreliable in the playoffs last year.
and dropping passes like nobody's business. I think of the four receivers though, Lad McConkey has been the most effective. Xavier Worthy though, I think is going to be elite for them, especially with Rashid Rice out right now. If I had to pick those five receivers again, the Chiefs would have Lad McConkey on their team over Xavier Worthy. But I think that's also a scheme fit for them as well. And then shouting out a few people in the second round that were taken. We have the great Cooper DeJean, the Jackie Robinson of corners, dare I say, in the 40th pick for the Eagles. He was super effective for them. And then we also have Kool-Aid McKinstry for the Saints. And
His
then
name is Kool-Aid.
his name is Kool-Aid. And believe it or not, he is not Caucasian, surprisingly enough. And then going down, second round, that's pretty much it for the second round. Third round, some notable shout outs. I don't think there's anybody to shout out in the third round. Maybe I'm wrong. And then, yeah, the draft kind of sprinkles down from here. I don't see any notable shout outs. Oh, Bucky Irving in the fourth round for the
Solid pickup.
Buccaneers. Very solid pickup for them. Um, and then it just kind of dwindles out from there. Some of these guys didn't end up making the NFL roster. Spencer Rattler in the fifth round. He's going to be the starting quarterback for the Saints this year. So lucky him. Tyron Tracy for the Giants. And that kind of dwindles down. Joe Milton in the sixth round for the Patriots, who is now a Cowboy. Um, and that
Stud.
and that
Absolute
kind of
stud.
Joe Milton. I want to see Joe Milton start a few games at some point in his career because I just think he's got the talent for it. God forbid if anything happens to Dak Prescott, he steps in. I think they could win games with him.
Yeah, and Dak has been injured, but he's going to be one of the first punters that just throws the ball down the field. I mean, his arm, like the throws he was making, even when they are being intercepted, still ridiculous arm talent.
Oh, for sure. I feel like if you get him with the right coach, then I think he could be insanely elite for them. He just needs to get his intangibles down, and I think he could be a formidable quarterback in the future.
Yeah, honestly, the Cowboys getting him, I feel like, is a W where everyone wants the Cowboys to go out there and get Shador Sanders from this draft and then have him sit under Dak Prescott. But if you can have Joe Milton sit behind Dak and then you don't have to pay Dak another contract, Dak is probably going to be injured at some point this year. He hasn't really been healthy since he got paid. I think Joe Milton's going to come in one or two games this year and maybe he won't be as accurate and he won't be as good of a quarterback per se as Dak Prescott. He'll give you more flashy plays. He has legs as well, and he'll be able to run where Dallas Cowboys fans will be able to look at him where maybe he's not as good as Dak Prescott, but at least he's more entertaining and looks like he has a much higher ceiling than Dak, where Dak, he's pretty much reached his peak already, and I don't think Dak Prescott is going to continue to ascend.
And not at this point. He's 10 years into the league at this point. He's had his injuries. I feel like the benefit you have of Joe Milton is that you have no pressure of him starting. He can just learn, get his intangibles down, and then come maybe 2 or 3 years from now, play him, see what he has ultimately. So I think the Cowboys, especially for a team that cares more about headlines than about wins, I think Joe Milton's going to fit into Jerry Jones' timeline pretty well.
Especially if Jerry Jones likes controversy, where he wants to see potentially Joe Milton push Dak Prescott for his job. And then you have some QB drama in the middle of the season where maybe the Cowboys aren't necessarily going to make the playoffs, but you're able to generate some headlines. And you were able to win quite a few games with Cooper Rush. And now Joe Milton would have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, who are two of the best 50-50 ball receivers in the league. And George Pickens can make some elite catches, and CeeDee Lamb just might be the best receiver in the league. I'm not saying he is, but he should definitely be mentioned as one of the best receivers in the league.
Yeah, 1,000%. You give him that, and I believe Joe Milton went to Tennessee, so he didn't really have great potential there. And he played well with the Patriots the one game he did play. We're talking 22 of 29 for a touchdown and threw for 240. So you give him those two receivers we just mentioned, which kind of fits into his play style anyways. I think the Cowboys would be in a great spot with Joe Milton.
Yeah, but I think Joe Milton like really would be the cherry on top of this draft where you could potentially have Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, and JJ McCarthy and Joe Milton, where you could possibly have 5 to 6 quarterbacks come out of this draft, which is really unheard of when you think about it.
Oh, 1,000%. I would agree with that. I just found out just now live that Joe Milton is the cousin of none other than potential future Hall of Famer Anquan Bolden.
Really?
Yes, he is the cousin of Anquan Bolden.
Okay. He's got good, as Sydney Sweeney would say, he's got good genes.
He's got good genes. I would have to agree there. But interested to see how the Cowboys and Joe Milton shake out, though.
Yeah, no, but overall, just looking back at that draft, how would you rate it from a scale of passable, just okay, or generational?
I would say it's a solid draft because I think that you get Jaden Daniels, who I think is going to be the top of this. He's going to be the one that we look at for this draft. You have good receivers, right? Malik Neighbors. We'll see what Marvin Harrison becomes. You have Brian Thomas Jr., who's been great. Lad McConkey's in the later rounds. So, like, I feel like talent wise, it's all around the board. You also have a Cooper DeJean of the world. You have some good pass rushers in here. And then there's obviously some more time for people to ascend. I would say it's passable. I don't think it's going to be generational unless if every single quarterback in that first round becomes generational. If Caleb Williams is the prince that's promised, if Drake May is the savior in New England, and then Janet Daniels continues his ascendance, and Bo Nix becomes a formidable quarterback.
Yeah, for me, it's really Bo Nix, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. I think are the three guys who are going to be a lock to at least start the next 3 to 4 years with their team. Where Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy are unsure, and Joe Milton's just going to be the wild card quarterback in this draft that could really come out of nowhere and be the cherry on top. Where we saw Brock Purdy be Mr. Irrelevant, and look what happened to him, where he made it to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think so. I think Joe Milton could definitely surprise some people. But overall, good draft. Running back core, definitely a weaker running back draft. The main attractions there was Bucky Irving in the fourth round. Otherwise, we have Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, all running backs that haven't really panned out so far. So, running back drafts definitely one of the weaker ones we've seen so far.
Yeah, but that is last year's draft. Let us know how you thought it holds up to other drafts. And then we went ahead and we went over our entire playoff picture based off of our divisional previews. We also recapped all of our divisional records, gave you what we thought as far as coaches on the hot seat, our awards this week's. So, anything else to say about the NFL or anything sports related before we get into what you've been listening to or watching to end the show?
No, I'm just excited for football to be back. It's been a lonely 6 months without it. And now we're going to have a perfect echelon where we're going to have basketball returning, hockey returning, MLB playoff baseball,
The
and the
Red
NFL,
Sox?
all the Red Sox. Exactly. We have baseball coming back in the playoffs. And then obviously the NFL season. It's the fall now. It's cooling off in Phoenix. God is good. So I'm happy for everything to be back to normal.
You sound like a Jets fan. Praise Jesus.
Praise Jesus. New York Jesus Jets. God willing.
New
But as
Jersey
far
Jesus
as
Jets.
what we've been watching, last week I watched the original Alien movie. This week I kept with Ridley Scott and I also kept with the Alien franchise. I watched The Aliens, which is the sequel to that of Alien, directed by James Cameron, and then I watched Blade Runner by Ridley Scott. And my impressions of both. Aliens is completely different from the Alien movie. If you want to watch a horror movie, watch the original Alien. It's actually horrifying, and I think it's great. Totally different energy to that of Aliens, which for me feels like, I don't know if this was the original like big action-packed blockbuster, but it feels like very sentimental of the '80s. You're killing aliens. You have Sigourney Weaver in there, a lot of all another memorable faces, and it's a lot more like big budget explosives. Definitely a movie I've seen before, in some capacity, but I do think that the way that they reintroduced the Alien franchise following that of the Alien original, they did well. I mean, they ended up making a very successful franchise from it, and I think that with what you built in the original, carrying on and knowing more about the alien species that they're fighting, I think is a good turn for that. And then as far as Blade Runner, my thing that I really liked about the Alien movie was the fact that it was a slow burn. So it built anticipation for when you finally see the alien and things start to get chaotic. In Blade Runner, Ridley Scott continues with that slow burn, but I don't think it executes quite the same. You have Harrison Ford as the main protagonist, and it's in like the kind of like an original cyberpunk setting. And I just don't think the movie has the same payoff as what Alien has. You have like really like the last 30 minutes are exciting, but for the rest of it, it's just very gloomy. There's a certain aura behind Blade Runner that I think it's worth watching, but I don't know. I'm going to watch the sequel to that came out with Ryan Gosling to see how they compare. But comparing both, Aliens is a lot more big budget compared to that of Alien, and then the slow burn that's successful for the original Alien doesn't pay off as much in Blade Runner.
Yeah, and with Aliens, I think it came out around the same time as Terminator 2 Judgment Day, where James Cameron did both of those movies and Blade Runner back to back to back. He could have had a couple movies in between, but they came out all relatively the same time. So Aliens is definitely a vibe switch from the first one, where it's a much more contained, disturbing horror movie, where the second one is just a balls to the walls action blockbuster movie. And I would definitely prefer Aliens over Blade Runner. Like, and also the newest Blade Runner 2049 is 3 hours. I watched that movie one time in theater. I think I liked it, but I just don't remember anything that happened in that movie.
Yeah, I think the Blade Runner has an interesting premise, but I just don't know. I feel like I'm going to enjoy the sequel more than that of the original Blade Runner because, like, I appreciate the cyberpunk setting and it definitely was generational for what it did for that genre. But I also don't think that the movie is overall like enjoyable to watch because the movie is just it's really slow at points and it's kind of gloomy and there's just moments where I was kind of bored watching Blade Runner, where I feel like with the other one, it might not be the case with that.
Yeah, and I that's some of the complaints with James Cameron, where a lot of the times he will have a really good concept, but just not do the right thing with it, and then we have to wait for him to release a um, director, or for Ridley Scott, we'll have to wait for him to release a director's cut of it for it to be good. Where with Ridley Scott, the movie Kingdom of Heaven, where it was originally 2 hours and 21 minutes. Then he releases the 3 hour version, and everyone likes that a lot better. Blade Runner, he released a director's cut, which is a lot better than the original one as well.
I watched the director's cut. I just think I I personally I enjoy it, but I also think that he probably could have cut more fat off of it from the director's cut personally. But I would ask what you've watched recently.
Yeah, so what I have watched or been playing recently is I finished Far Cry 5, and I am on to Far Cry 6 now. So this is the one with Giancarlo Esposito as the villain. And this game, it just feels like they took Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 5 and mashed it into one video game. And it's definitely interesting because they changed the combat up a little bit. So the first game I've played, I think that was actually made for the PS5. And the thing I love about this game is you can drive tanks in it.
That's sick.
Like, the fifth one, you have a lot of different vehicles. There's a semi truck in it with two machine guns on it. You can fly planes in this one, but this one is essentially about a revolution taking place in a fictional island, but it's a spin on Cuba. And then it opens up in the middle of Giancarlo Esposito's character taking over in the game. Then you're essentially typical Far Cry fashion, have to raid bases, do missions for other people to weaken the base. But this one, it just feels like they polished the entire series where you're able to drive tanks in this one. You have the similar buddy system to Far Cry 5, except in this one, it's only animals. You don't have people in it. So when you first start the game, you get an alligator that will run around
That's
and
sick.
eat people for you, which
That's
is pretty
sick.
awesome. And then just the animation in this game is absolutely stunning with just how the simple movements with how the trees are moving in the breeze. I'm only probably like 10 hours into the game, but overall the animation in the combat has blown me away. You'll have different guards. Some of them are armored and some of them aren't. So you have to be more strategic with what type of guns you're using as well. So just the fact that you can either ride a horse, drive a motorcycle, or a tank. I went through an entire base just inside a tank, blowing up everyone in it. It wasn't even a challenge. It's like, all right, we're driving tanks now.
Now, would you think that? Do you think this is better than Far Cry 5 so far? Playing it early on.
Um, I would say yes. I'm a fan of like good graphics and combat. I think the story is definitely really interesting in this one. Far Cry 5, I really like the setting of Montana a lot. The cult storyline is really cool, but it just seems like they went all out with this game and they added on what everyone loved about Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 5. And really, the criticism with Far Cry 6 is just franchise fatigue where it's kind of more of the same types of missions, but I think they really did a good job with polishing everything from the previous games when it comes to the combats, different types of vehicles as well. You have this thing called Supremos where it's essentially a backpack where you either get like a jetpack, flamethrower, or you can just shoot rockets out of it.
Oh, that's sick as fuck. Yeah, that's dope. I haven't played Far Cry 6, but I know that like you have Giancarlo Esposito, who's like one of the greatest villains of any TV show ever. And then you carry that on. I know he had his success in The Mandalorian as well. Doing that again in the video game setting, I feel like he was born to do that, especially in Far Cry.
Yeah, the major complaint with him in this Far Cry game is he's advertised all over the game, but he's not in it as much as you think he'll be. The only thing with that is if you played any of the Far Cry games, most of the main villains kind of just loom in the background till you finish the game. Like anytime in Far Cry 5 you would kill one of the henchmen, then you would just have a cutscene with the main villain with him talking. Then that's really the only role he played in the game outside of the first mission. So it's not out of the ordinary for Far Cry to do that. I feel really, I feel like outside the third game, most of the villains, even the fourth one, they kind of just sit in the background.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it was Voss in Far Cry 3. That was like a generational villain as far as Far Cry 3, how successful that was. The villain in that, I feel like, was also super easy to hate as well. So I feel like that's kind of what cemented Far Cry as being as iconic as it was.
Yeah, a lot of people think Far Cry 3 is one of the best games of all time. I've watched a couple like videos of people going over the Far Cry series, and a lot of people put the third game as the number one, and then there's just some debate if 4 or 5 is at the number two spot, depending on who you ask. But overall, if you don't have franchise fatigue from it and you haven't like binged through all the Far Cry ones, I feel like aesthetically and just gameplay wise, the sixth one is by far the best.
Good to know. Yeah, that's definitely. I feel like Far Cry, as far as like quality, I can't speak for the first two Far Cries because I never played them, but Far Cry 3 on, it feels like they just hit 3, 4, 5, and 6 like perfectly. I feel like all of them were critically acclaimed. All of them are fun to play. All the ones that I've played have been great. So I feel like Far Cry, it's just one of those franchises that I feel like you can pretty much predict that it's going to be quality every time.
Yeah, and the thing I like about Ubisoft is I was never a hardcore gamer and I'm more of a normie gamer, and I think Ubisoft just makes games for people who don't want to play Dark Souls or don't want to deal with people who play Call of Duty 8, 10 hours a day.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I feel like it's because I think they also make the Assassin's Creed series, or they did at one point, and those
And
are
they do
both
Watch
games.
Dogs too.
Yeah, so they've done three great franchises that are all in that realm of I can play this game, play some missions, kill some random people, and go to bed. Whereas all these other jobs, like you have to basically grind to be great at that game. Whereas this game, you can just plug it in and have fun, and it's not deep like that.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm just dumb, but I tried playing The Witcher 3 and I couldn't figure that game out.
Dude, I remember when I tried to play God of War back in the day. Granted, I was a kid, so maybe I was even dumber than I am today. But that game was so hard, or maybe it was Shadows of the Colossus, but same type of like style of game. And those games are fucking brutal. I remember I had like the first fight with whoever the fuck Kranos was fighting. I don't even remember. And it was impossible. It was like this giant ogre thing that just demolished me every time. Maybe it's just I'm just not that good at video games. Maybe that's why I stick to my Maddens and other sports games. But those games are they're just like I don't want to play a video game and, and scream and yell at the TV, which is why I don't play Call of Duty and why I don't play games like that.
Yeah, and like games like Call of Duty, people just have way more time to be dedicated to it. I don't have as much time to just be good at playing online either. But even a game like Dark Souls, you lose health each time you die. So each time you die, you have less of a chance of actually succeeding, which makes no sense for me. They're just hard for the sake of being hard.
Yeah, I don't want that. If I'm gonna play a video game, it's to relax. So Dark Souls is not our audience. It's not we're not the audience they're seeking. They're seeking the hardcore gamers, the same assholes that were beating Mario back in the 80s, just one rip through. Like it's the same people that are playing Dark Souls today.
Yeah, it's a cool concept, but yeah, Far Cry 6 definitely been a good game so far. Animation is really good. It's my first game I think that's come out for the PS5 that I've played on PS5 so far.
That's dick. Yeah, because you guys got that PS5 fairly recently, I think, right?
Yeah, we got one and the heater or something was broken on it. So anytime we would boot up a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, it would just crash automatically. The only games that would work were like Pinball or Oblivion. So we ended up having to trade it in for a new one and just procrastinated for a couple months doing that.
But now you guys can play the games. And now when GTA 6 comes out next year, you guys have something to play it on.
Yeah, when it comes out, I will believe that it's out when it comes out. But I think GTA 6 is going to be slated for like $90, or they're going to charge $100 for it when it first comes out.
I'm gonna buy it. I'm sorry. It's just like a generational moment. I saw that this is an interesting thing that I read earlier. They have they dedicated a whole department to water physics. So like you can water ski and you can, swim and there's a whole bunch of other shit that you can do in the water. They dedicated $200 million to a team of developers to develop water physics in GTA 6
That's
so that you can do.
crazy. And I know, I
Yeah,
think what took them so long is just coming up with the ending for the game, for the story.
probably.
And is this one supposed to take place in Miami or is it LA?
I think it's in Florida. I think it's geared around Miami, but I think it's just like Florida in general. It's a huge map, I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, it better be if it took this long.
I got that game in 8th grade, and here we are now.
It's like 2012 is when it came out.
It came out in 2012, September 17th of 20. I only remember because it's Devin's birthday, but September 17th. I remember putting it in my living room on my PS3 to play it with the boys on Skype. That's how long ago that game came out. That game came out. It's insane how long. It's been insanely long. And then when we finally get it, I'm going to be approaching 30. I hate to say it. And life has changed quite a lot since then. So I don't know. We'll see when it actually comes out. But I'll probably just buy it because it's just one of those cultural moments that happens clearly at this point, like once every 2 decades.
Yeah, and hopefully it doesn't take that long to get Red Dead Redemption 3, but I don't
God willing.
I think we'd get Red Dead Redemption 3 sooner just because the online presence for Red Dead 2 isn't as popular as GTA 5 is right now, where the events for GTA 5 online are still really popular.
It's still like one of the best selling games every month. It's insane. But yeah, I'm interested to see. But we covered the playoff picture for the NFL. So you guys are up to speed now on all things NFL, our predictions for the season, how the playoffs will progress, storylines to watch out for. We also covered what we've been watching. So now you guys are up to date there. Any last comments before we conclude our show today?
Yeah, we went over all of that. We will be back and we won't be live for our next episode, but we will get you one just since I'll be on the road for the next 2 weeks upcoming here, just with our predictions for week 1 and our top 5 and bottom 5 teams heading into week 1. So definitely check out for that episode to be released sometime in the middle of next week, probably on Wednesday night. But most importantly, until then, stay
Stay
brick.
break.